You know, I used to not be into dominant 7 add 13 chords. Then my dad got a job. So today we're going to talk about what I think is an underutilized chord in a lot of certain genres of music that is really cool. So first of all, we're going to start by doing it rooted on an A string. The chord voicing is going to sound like this. Okay, so I've got my pointer finger on the low E string, 5th fret. I'm skipping the A string for this. My middle finger is on the 5th fret of the D string. My ring finger is on the 6th fret of the G string, and my pinky is on the 7th fret of the B string. Okay, there's a couple different ways to play this, but I want to focus on this one right now. All right. So what this is a dominant 7 or an A7 add 13 chord, which is different than like a 13 chord. And really just to talk about chord building for a second and why it's called like a add 13, something like that, is because chords are built in thirds, okay? So if we have like degrees of a scale, again, there's only 7 notes in any key, really. We build those in thirds by taking the first note, then we go to the third, which is the third note, then the next interval, that third interval is gonna be the 5th note, then the 7th note, then the 9th note, then the 11th note, then the 13th note, okay? Now, that's a lot of different notes to have in one guitar chord, and in fact, there's only 6 strings on most guitars, so we can't even play all the notes that are technically in a 13 chord. That's why we have these add 13 chords, or we're implying certain notes. So if we go back and look at this A7 add 13 chord, again, talk about what is actually happening here. We have a root note here, which is an A. Now, where my middle finger is, this is the flat 7. This is what makes it a dominant 7 chord as compared to a major 7 chord. Remember, all this comes from the major scale. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Flatten that. And we already get a very kind of minor sound, something that goes on the 5 chord. We'll talk more about that later. But yeah, basically we have a root. It's flat 7. Where your ring finger right here is super important because this determines the class of the chord, whether it's major or minor, right? So 1, 2, 3. That is a major third. So we have a dominant 7 chord voicing right here. In fact, if you want to like look at this, is almost just kind of like a precursor into an add 13 chord. We can start here. All right. So you might already know this chord voicing. If not, no big deal. 5th fret on the low A string, 4th fret on, or 5th fret on the low E string, 4th fret on the A string, 5th fret on the D string, and the 6th fret on the G string. Right there, we're basically taking this maybe kind of like somewhat more commonly used 7 chord and then adding the 13th note away from the root, right? Right here. So a 1, a flat 7, a minor third, flat 3, and then a 13 actually, okay? So if we think of the notes that we're leaving out of this chord, we're leaving out the 5th, like a power chord, we're implying that the 5th is there because the root note and the 5th are so strongly related, we don't even need to play the 5th to technically make what is being implied in this guitar chord voicing. We're also leaving out, we're jumping right from the flat 7 all the way to the 13, okay? So we're leaving out the 9 and the 11, and we're really just kind of getting the highlights of what makes this a juicy add 13 chord. We're adding that 13th note away to kind of like a dominant 7 chord. Now, one other way that you can do this is let's just take a regular A major bar chord. A lot of people, you'll find this a lot easier, unless you're just really hating on bar chords, is if you just take your pinky, lift it up, now it's an A7, and then now put it on the B string. Also works. But I do want to make a distinction that there is a little bit of a difference sonically when this note is on top of the chord. That's when you put a melody note or whatever on top of a chord, that means it's the highest note played in a chord. It'll kind of stand out a little bit more. And when you do it in a bar chord shape like this, and you're barring the 5th fret, that A, that high A, which is the root note again, kind of gets a little more I can hear that A a little bit more than if I did right there. So when it comes to kind of like maybe creating some movement and a melody, it's really kind of important which chord voicing you use. Plus, notwithstanding, just look at my hand right here. I feel like I can play jazz just by getting my hand into this position when really I cannot. So, a couple examples in this, maybe some 2 culturally iconic examples of this. There's the Cardigan song, Love Fool. It's like A minor to D minor. is that G, 7, add 13 chord. Now where this goes usually is back to the 1 chord in a progression, okay? Since this is a dominant 7 chord, essentially, it happens on the 5th degree of any key, right? So in the key of C, if we have all the notes in the key of C, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, that progression would be a 6, A minor, to a 2, to a 5, to a 1. But you can play it with just kind of basic triad chords, just major minor chords. 6, 2, 5, 1. So it just kind of adds a little bit of special sauce. Another great example is an incredible song called Parador by a relatively unknown artist that has a descending chromatic line. Okay, so in that instance, we actually go from a B 7 add 13 to A major 7. This would be a 5 to a 4 cadence, which I think there's a little bit of resolution there too, which might eventually, at some point in history, bring you home to the 1 chord. So I think it's just like maybe a way that you can explore getting from one place to another a little bit easier, because I think it's in a lot of compositions and stuff that I see across all genres of music, you'll see tons of dominant 7 chords. Like, it's more dominant 7 chords than you can shake a cat at out there. But you really don't see, in my opinion, in specific genres of music, a ton of dominant 7 add 13 chords. And I think it's like a really great way that you can kind of like maybe just do something that isn't really that much more difficult. You're just kind of adding one extra note. And in certain situations, I think it can sound really good. Specifically when you go back to like that 1 major 7 chord, which I do personally all the time. Like, let's take that A add 13 chord and go home right there. The nice thing is it's actually more helpful, because if you look at this D major 7 chord, where again this would be the 1 chord, if this is our money shot here on that 7 add 13 chord, my pinky just gets to kind of post up right there, because in a major 7 chord voicing it's 5A, 7D, 6G, 7B, right? So you can kind of pivot right there. So if you're into maybe voice leading, which I might do some more videos on somewhat soon, it's a good way to kind of move things in a certain direction and set up where you're going, or throw different curveballs. You don't have to do it this way. You could put this on, like, put 2 of them. Like, have this be the 5 chord, have this be the 4 chord. Okay, so that was just kind of like the traditional 5 or 7 add 5 dominant 7 add 13 chord, on the 4 7 add 13 chord, to the 3, to the 2, 1. So there's a lot of different creative uses for it. That's just kind of like the one place that you'll see it most commonly is on the 5 chord. So really, get this guy in your arsenal, because you never know when it might come in handy. And it's a really easy chord voicing, you know what I mean? It's like, it's not a bar. Impress your friends just by getting your hand in this position. Live that jazz life. If you have any questions, hit me in the comment section, Instagram, Twitter, or the website. Talk to y'all soon. Thanks a lot.